Hi, welcome back. Yeah, this one's pretty like a few seconds after the previous upload, and I think it's finally time today to because I've mentioned my own campaign, and today I'm actually going to introduce it a little bit more fully because my plans are eventually that this campaign setting will be so you can like buy it and play it for yourself. So I can introduce a little bit of the backstory about what the Silveltien Empire is, how it works, and generally just talk about it a little bit because I'm proud of it. So the Silveltien Empire is, well, of course, an empire who they spanned roughly. I usually say that it's actually like in land is twice as big as America, and yeah, the U.S., not North America, but the U.S. Just for like a frame of reference, how big it is. It's divided into four different regions. There's the north, the south, the west, and the east part of the empire. And the reason why I tell about that is because I'm going to now explain a little bit about the hierarchy. Like on the top here, we got the emperor. He is, for all of a lack word, a paranoid old man that has a little bit of a psychopathic tendencies. He doesn't really care about people. And the emperor rules the entire empire, but he's pretty paranoid, so he generally is pretty much the main villain of our story or the campaign, which I call the fall of an empire because it's all about how the empire falls. So yeah, and under him there are the four noble families of the Silveltien Empire. In the north we have the Giant family. In the south we got the Leviathan family. In the east we got the Phoenix family, and in the west we got the Dragon family. So yeah, each one of them are named after a mythical beast or a mythical creature of sorts. And each, which I always like about it, is that each part of the empire has a unique. I draw inspiration from different things. For an example, in the south, it's probably a lot more like ancient Roman Greek ish vibes. It's a lot more like Mediterranean climate down there. In the west, it's more of a feudal era Japan, like those kind of shrines and that type of architecture. Up in the north, it's more like Viking-ish, like Scandinavian type type of architecture. In the east, it's more of an Egyptian, like ancient Egypt. They got pyramids and shit. So, and in the middle, we've got the Elven Forest. The Elven Forest is where most elves tend to hang out. They kind of live on their own, and they are really not that much ruled actually. They just, but I guess the closest thing they got to a government is the druids, the druidic circle that spans around, which one of my characters is a part of, which I'll introduce those for chaotic dumbasses later in the video. So that's a little bit of just, and there are other like organizations. For example, there are two that are technically in the hierarchy, but they don't. But they're kind of different. They don't really. For example, there is the Magic Council, which works personally with the Emperor, and their mission is to, well, basically regulate or and control who magic, like who can learn it, who gets information about it, and the fifth one is an individual named Thomas Kane, which is his real name, but he goes under the alias of the Merchant. And he's probably what you expect. He's a merchant. He travels around the empire, all parts of it, because he's allowed to, and just generally sells stuff. But what most people don't know, or very few actually know, is that he's actually part of an underground resistance against the Empire called the Eye, which their symbol is literally an eye. So he's got his own reasons. He's actually the founder of the Eye, and him and some men of his generally just try to like small plan a rebellion against them, which is the main focus of the campaign is this rebellion and how my players joins it and try to generally help. So yeah, there are very many different races. Some are native to specific parts. I mentioned that the elves are native to the elven forest, or technically, which this is a little bit more of a general D&D lore, there are more than one universe, or different planes of existence. And in my world, all of them come from a place called the Feywild, which where Fey, aka fairies, also come from. It's more of a think like the manifestation of the alignment chaotic good. So they are pretty like they tend to literally just like play pranks on each other, and that is where the elves originally come from. The dwarves come from the northern side of the empire. Tieflings, which is what Thomas is, are native to the east. Halflings are down in the south, and humans are kind of everywhere. And the orcs are said to come from above the mountains. So yeah, so we can go over to a bit of how magic is treated here. So in general, the Silveltien Empire is very much a high magic setting. Like there is magic around, and it's pretty common. Like if a commoner usually at least has seen one time magic be used. Like your normal Joe Schmo would know and could recognize, okay, that's magic, but he can't learn it because he isn't allowed. And the only really arcane casters that are really allowed in the Empire are wizards. Because, well, as I mentioned in another video, wizards get their magic from books. And it's a lot easier to control that information because, well, then you just decide, okay, that person is allowed to learn, that one is not. While warlocks are, well, they're usually, they can be reasoned with, like some do work for like the government, but it's a lot harder because the Empire really don't have control of devils, demons, and other supernatural beings, which is usually what a warlock usually does a pact with, a supernatural creature. So they don't. So they're really like frowned upon. Like you aren't killed for being a warlock, but people tend to stay away. Then we come to sorcerers, which they are the ones who have it the worst, because you have two choices if the government realizes you're a sorcerer. Either number one, you join as a mage soldier, or two, you get killed or executed. Because, well, sorcerers get their magic from some accident or innate bloodline, and those are a lot harder to control because, well, you can't control. Well, they have sort of controlled it, like at least the draconic bloodline part, because there are technically only one dragon still living, and that's only rumored is said to be a silver dragon up in the northern parts, but it's more considered a rumor actually, but some believe it's actually true. So yeah, they have managed to get the draconic bloodlines away because simply they've killed all the dragons, so they can't create new ones. The only problem is that most draconic bloodlines in my world are usually hidden. Like, they might live in a swamp or something. So, and it's pretty hard. It's actually probably a lot easier to find a draconic bloodline sorcerer because they've usually got a little bit of dragon skills on them. But yeah, most of the draconic families are usually obscure. Like, you wouldn't know a draconic bloodline if unless you're a friend of one of them or knows them on a personal level. The only one that really is like popular is the dragon family. And yeah, that's a big spoiler. The dragon family are ancestors of a golden dragon. But they tend to keep that hidden because, well, they kind of want to stay on the good side of the Emperor. So yeah, that's a little bit of how magic is treated within the Empire. It's very much like, okay, they want to control it. Clerics, they've also got a pretty good grasp on because, well, they control the religion because they've made up new gods, which are all named after Roman gods. So Well, it's a lot easier to control a mythology when you create it from the beginning. The druids, they don't really care about. They keep watch on them sometimes, but they do their own thing because they are not all openly hostile to them. And paladins the same. They regulate religion. So that's a little bit about how the empire tends to work. Now we are going to go and meet the four characters which are the stories gonna follow. The first one to get introduced at least is Eldon Tealeaf, which is played by my dad, and he is a all of them start at the third level. He's the third level rogue and picked the arcane trickster subclass and is a criminal. By that's his background, he's a criminal. And arcane tricksters are basically thieves with a little bit of magic. And basically to explain his, because we did a prequel, a one-shot prequel. So basically he was kind of always been this happy-go-lucky guy. He wants adventure, he loves it, he just want to have fun and enjoy life. And his dad taught him once a spell which is incredibly dangerous, which is called Mage Hand, which basically creates a spectral hand that you can take or do stuff with. So one time he's at a bar called, which is called the Bronze Unicorn, which is actually a sort of hotel pub area within the south. There's the golden one, the silver, the copper, and the bronze one. So and he sees a drunk wizard from the Empire, and he decides to steal his spell book, which is full of a bunch of spells, which he currently knows now. Which is also where he meets the merchant, as he basically realizes and basically busts his ass, but because he's a rogue himself and honor among thieves, so he's like, okay, I won't tell anyone, and he just buries the book under a big ass tree. They go on a little bit of an adventure, like selling a stuff to the dragon, to Coral Dragon, the head of the dragon family. But on their way back, they find a ancient temple, because in the Silveltien Empire there is a rumor going around that there has been a civilization before the Empire, like 200 years ago. And this tower seems to be from that old era. And they find this like hologram thing that basically there's like a bunch of elves. One of them screams dragon, you hear dragon roar in the distance, and then it ends. So the merchant gives it to Eldon and just tells him to like back off, you are getting too much dangerous crap. And that's a little bit about his backstory. Then we're gonna pick up with my NPC, Carlos Eisenberg. And to explain him, he's a drunken madman. He drinks a lot because his backstory is that he's part of the Heisenberg family, which are a bunch of family of adventurers. But when he was 16, like 12, he was sent off to a military camp and trained to be a soldier. And he rose up the ranks as a general, but the defining moment was when his and the 13th platoon, yeah, the 13th is an unlucky number, got ambushed and everyone got killed except him. So currently he's got PTSD for days, drinks a lot to forget it, and he barely sleeps because every time he sleeps, he gets nightmares from that day and other battles, and all he sees are dead bodies everywhere and him covered in blood. So yeah, he's pretty melancholy, depressed. He has a little bit of depression and PTSD and anxiety. So yeah, he's a pretty dark-ish character. Then we've got Julius Dragon, who is Carl Dragon's older son. And Julius was pretty. He never really liked the way his dad ruled the family because he is just like the Emperor, is a dictating madman. So when he was 16 or something, he ran away. And yeah, he's an half elf, so currently he knows where the golden dragon went, which spoilers is that it's dead and has been dead for 100 years. But currently he is searching for his mother and general answers to why the fuck he exists. So yeah, he is a draconic bloodline sorcerer with his specialty being in fire magic. Then we got Diana Amakiri, which is an elven last name which means gemflower. So Diane was raised by Fae for most of her life, which is why one of her languages she knows is Sylvan, which is the language of the Fae. But when she was like 100 or so years ago, like 80, because remember, elves live for like 700 years. She met up with this old, like 600 years old, wood elf named Henry, who taught her a little bit of druid magic. So that's a little, and she's a druid with the hermit background. So that's a little bit about the Silveltien Empire. Hope you liked this video, and maybe I'll do more videos about the Empire, a little bit more in detail. Adios.